Hey, what is up everybody? This is Caticus, and today I'm going to make a video all about why I buy the music hardware that I buy and a concept that I have in regards to music gear, which is buying gear as an instrument and buying it as a thing. So this is the whole point of this video, is this concept of hardware as an instrument and hardware as a thing. And in order to explain this concept, I'm going to start by showing you the Nintendo DS Lite, or not DS Lite, Nintendo Switch Lite, okay? I already own a Nintendo Switch, the original version with the detachable Joy-Cons, but when I was in Japan, I saw one of these and I bought one, and I gotta say, Nintendo kind of dropped the ball for like how usable the Nintendo Switch is if you have two of them with the same account, because in order to play the games, it has to like confirm that it's like not playing on the other one, and it has to connect to the internet. It's very annoying, but it as a thing is really cool. If you look at it, one of the coolest things about it is the eggshell texture, the rounded corners, and how everything is all hard and nice and packed and put together. And it as a thing is a very cool object. It feels neat to own and hold and use. So, and the buttons are all nice and clicky and stuff. So it as a thing is really cool. It as a like secondary Nintendo Switch is not so cool. But anyway, the point of this video is to talk about music hardware. What makes me buy the hardware that I buy? And we're going to go through each of my devices as an instrument to start out with, and as a thing secondary, okay? So these are the two things that make me buy the gear that I get. Part of seeing it or owning my gear as a thing is also the user interface, how fun it is or how cool it is to be able to noodle around on it and play with it. So I'm going to flip the camera around and start showing you different pieces of my gear, explain to you what it is that drew me to the gear as an instrument, as the sounds, as sound creation, but also as a thing. So I'll flip this around and see you guys in a second. Alright, let's start off this video with the Dreadbox Medusa. Now in this video, I'm going to give each device a score as an instrument, from my understanding, and a score as a thing, from my liking, okay? So when I say a score of an instrument from my understanding, as you see in all of my like totally amateur reviews of my gear, I don't understand these things as deeply, like all the features of them that they possibly offer, so they could be better instruments than I know. But from my understanding, from the kind of guy who just buys hardware because he likes them, or he likes how they sound or how they look or whatever, this is what I think of them as an instrument, when you could just like buy it, put it in on your table, and like pick up and play without even reading the manual. You just pick up and play. So there is my understanding. Let's start with the Dreadbox Medusa. Now I lusted after this thing for a long time. I honestly was a little disappointed with it when I first got it, but as I started to learn it more, I started to appreciate it a lot more. But let's just say, as a thing, the Dreadbox Medusa is a really cool thing. Look at its shallow depth, its long layout, its grid, all of its like knobs and sliders. I mean, it just looks like the kind of thing that says play with me. As a thing, I would say this thing scores an 8. I think with a color variation, or I don't know, some, like maybe it's the coloring or the color of the pads, like just white lights behind or whatever, that isn't so appealing. And of course this is subjective. Somebody could think that this is the nicest looking thing ever because it's plain and understated. But personally, I think that if it were a little more, I don't know, like colorful or something, it'd be more appealing as a thing. But like I said, I'd give it an 8 as a thing because it's just such a play with me device. Like, it just says play with me, and it looks like the kind of thing that for me, when I saw it, I was like, oh my God, I really want one of these things. It looks so cool to use. And it is really cool to use. It's not hard to learn how to use the grid to program sequences. It's also really easy to like plug it in to my MPCLive over there to the MIDI input, and then use the sequencer in here to play other gear. So it's quite good as a sequencer. It's not bad as a synthesizer. I mean, it's got three analog oscillators and 3 digital oscillators. It is not polyphonic, it's paraphonic, so it'll use each oscillator in a chord, as you could see with that little demo that I did. So if I just play this one, you hear that like it's just one key, but it's playing different sounds, like just different oscillation. That's because it's like cycling through the different oscillators, and the oscillators on here aren't bad. They sound pretty nice. Like if I turn all of it up and turn all of it down except for one. That's just the analog oscillator, and that's just one of them. Oh, that's 2 of them actually. Turn on. You can do a lot of stuff. It's pretty versatile. But as a thing, yeah, like I said, it scores an 8. Which is really high in my books, and it is a lot of fun to play with, and it's a very versatile machine. As an instrument, I would say it scores about a 7. Like I said, the oscillators aren't bad, but I don't know, it's a little dry. You can see that the main focus wasn't on oscillation so much as creating a cool box to be able to use for sequences and stuff like that. I mean, opinions may differ. Some people might think that this scores a 10 in the instrument index, and for them, gung-ho, all about it. Next, we're going to move on to this here, the Access Virus TI Polar. It's not the T2, or like it's the first version. And the only difference between a TI-1 and a TI-2 is like a little bit more power in the TI-2 versions, but all of the like engines and synthesis are the same. I really wanted these mostly because of the reputation they held. Like I am very active on a couple of Discords and Reddits about synthesizers and gear, and this was like all the rage during the time when I was like going gung-ho with getting hardware. And so I really wanted one. And looking at the panel, I mean, it looks really cool. The colors, in my opinion, are a little bit ugly, but it looks cool to play with. As a thing, I would say this thing scores maybe a 7, mostly because of the colors. As an instrument, I would say it's a 7 or an 8, and mostly that's because part of my liking it as a thing and as an instrument is the user interface. How easy it is to use from my personal amateur limited experience. And I find this one, it's not confusing so much as it's a little bit cumbersome. There is some menu diving, especially for the mod matrix, there's a lot of menu diving. But the key thing is like having to like press through different things, like different buttons to select different oscillators and stuff like that. And then like tuning it and then like, oh crap, that's oscillator 2, I want to change to oscillator 1. Like you gotta constantly be pressing different buttons to select different things in order to change different things. And I kind of find that annoying. I wish there was a little more knob per function on here and a little less button pressing. But, actually when I got this, I actually was a little bit more still related to my phase of liking buttons more than knobs. Like when I first started out with hardware synthesis, I was intimidated by knobs. I totally turned off by them. Because I was like, buttons are cool. I like the like clicky, buttony, like press stuff and figure stuff out angle, and the knobs really turned me off. So this thing was even more appealing to me before. But through my exploration and journey through hardware synthesis, of course, I started becoming more and more, fascinated by I don't want to say like into knobs because it sounds so weird, but yeah, I started to have more of a preference for synthesizers with a lot of knobs on them, a lot of control, and then like twisting knobs to get different sounds to happen. So as an instrument, like I said, about a 7. If I were just to rate this thing on sound, I would give it a 9 or a 10 because it is so versatile and it can make so many sounds and you can really change them. The only reason I give it a 7 is because, like I said, the user interface using it, and this is related to both sound and looking at it as a thing, is that having to press so many buttons to do some like normal stuff is kind of annoying, and that kind of like turns me off of the process of making sounds on this device. Also, a lot of the presets, I do like presets, and I don't like the presets on the Access Virus TI. I think a lot of them are tinny and cheap sounding, so they don't do a good representation of what the synthesizer can do. It depends which Access Virus you get. Most of them are used, and a lot of people have updated their presets with like custom ones from the internet, as have I, and I haven't really found like a pack of presets that just like blows me away with the sound of this thing. So yeah, that's my thoughts on that. 7 as an instrument, 7 as a thing. Moving on to the Novation Peak over here, I'm immediately going to give this a 10 for a thing, because it is just like all these knobs are wonderfully laid out, and like a nice little section of sliders here. Beautiful OLED screen right here, which doesn't have too much information, but also doesn't have too little information. As a thing, you don't have to menu dive so much to get to different features because so many of the knobs right here represent and control the different features of the oscillators or of the synthesizer itself. As an instrument, I would give this easily a 9 and maybe even a 10. This thing can sound fantastic. I'm going to pause the video for 1 second here, and then I'm going to make sure that my MPCLive is controlling this, because obviously you see there's no way to control it on here. And then I'm going to make some sounds out of here. Ooh, blow your mind. Hold on. Okay, I've got it ready here. I'm controlling it through MIDI, so... There's one patch on there. There's one that I made and I haven't named it. Let's just go up an octave. Sounds beautiful. This is just an init patch, so I haven't done so much with it. You can hear the effects in there. The reverb is beautiful. The built-in reverb on here is wonderful. I don't use chorus much. The delay is pretty cool, although again, I don't use delay very much. But as a thing, it's a definite 10. It's beautiful. The colors are wonderful. The build quality is wonderful. The wood touch, the odd blue on the bottom down there is weird, but it's cool. As a thing, it just says play with me. So when I saw this, I immediately wanted one, and I'm totally happy with my purchase of it. I have no regrets about it whatsoever. Okay, let's move on to the next thing. Here we have the Dave Smith or Oberheim OB6. So this is a partnership between Dave Smith and whatever his first name, Oberheim. And this as a thing, I would give it, I don't know, an 8 maybe? An 8 as a thing. It's nicely made, you know, like wood paneling and like nice solid build quality, and it's got a decent amount of knobs. I don't know. I like, for example, the buttons on here. I really like this style of button. It feels nice and clicky. As a thing, like I said, it's probably a solid 8. However, as an instrument, I would say probably also an 8. The reason I don't give this thing a 10, it can sound absolutely wonderful. Okay, it can sound amazing in its range. Like if you're going for the OB6 sound, that like classic 80s wonderful sound. Let me just pause this and see if I can find it. Okay, here we go. Here's an example of that classic 80s wonderful sound. Sorry, I keep hitting it wrong because I'm watching, seeing what I'm doing through the phone screen. I should look at the actual device. You know, this kind of sound, nothing beats the OB6 for this kind of like wonderful, lush 80s sound, you know? But I've found, and this is just my personal limited experience, I've found that the OB6 has a hard time making nice sounds outside of its range. So you get one of these things because you love those like classic OB6 sounds, but then you try to make something else and it's like, oh, I don't know, it sounds just not as good. And maybe it's not as good because it's in comparison to the wonderful 80s sounds that it makes, or maybe it's not as good because this synthesizer is just not very good at making sounds outside of its range. I don't know. But in my personal opinion, this is why I give this thing an instrument score of 8. A thing score of 8 because it's really nicely laid out. Did I say 8 or 9? Well, I'm going to say 8. It's nicely laid out and everything, but I don't know. It doesn't like say, oh my god, I want one, just by looking at it as a thing. So there you go. That's the OB6. We're going to move along to the ASMHydrasynth. Okay, so looking at the Hydrasynth, this as a thing for me is a 9 or a 10. And the reason I feel that way is, and I know this is controversial because some people think it's ugly, I guess with the orange and black or whatever, but personally, when I saw it, the combination of buttons and knobs on here and the like tight layout of it and the solid build quality, it just as a thing, as a chunk of matter, it's a very appealing looking device. You've got the pads down here for playing, you've got knobs with screens up here that tell you what each knob does, and then like you choose a different screen and it chooses all this stuff. Like as a thing, as a user experience, it's quite wonderful to get into, to dig into. You've got your selection for all sorts of different, like basically the pathway. You've got an entire selection for the sound pathway from start to finish, for the signal pathway, to be able to change different things, and each one that you press on changes the screens up here, and you can actually see like so much information about what you're doing. It's especially great for an amateur like me to be able to see what each thing is, how it works, what it does, and how I'm changing it. So this as a thing is a 9 or a 10. I would probably even say a 10. For me, it's a 10 as a thing. As an instrument, again, a 9 or a 10. And the reason I say that is because this thing can make some of the most versatile sound design that I've seen in a synthesizer. I talk so well, or like I talk up this synth so much to anybody who asks me about it, or anybody who says I'm looking for a synth that isn't too expensive and is good for like starting out as my first hardware synth or whatever. I always recommend this one because the price range is wonderful, but also because, again, the user experience is so good, especially for somebody who's just trying to get into hardware synthesis. But again, as for like sound itself, it's such a versatile synth that can make such a wide arrangement or wide variation of sounds, partly in part because of the 3 digital oscillator, in part because of the plethora of different filters inside, and also in part because of the wave scan feature, where you can set up 8 different wave shapes and then set up the behavior that if you press a key, it will scan through all different waves. All 8 different waves, and it can either go through it once based upon the LFO, or it can go back and forth like looping it, or it can be according to how much aftertouch you press. And that's another thing, is this thing has polyphonic aftertouch. So this thing as an instrument is a wonderful instrument. I feel the designers of it, the engineers who put this thing together, put a lot of thought into making a synthesizer that wasn't just a me too in the entire sea of hardware synthesizers that are available. They thought, what could we do to make this thing awesome and make it a wonderful experience? And they definitely did it. I'm going to play some sounds on here. So let me pause the video. I'm going to play some sounds on here to let you hear what the synthesizer sounds like and hear perhaps why I think this is such, why this is a 9 or a 10. All right, let's play a few chords on here. Try a different patch. Beautiful basic. Yeah, just a basic example of it. Let's try another patch on here. See if we can get the sound to be very different. Blades titles. wonderful. The ASMHydrasynth is a wonderful instrument and a wonderful thing. Let's move along here to the MC-808. So I have a great love for Grooveboxes. And a Groovebox is a machine that you can make all parts of a song in and put them all together in the device and play it as a song. So for example, if I do this, and I start unmuting parts, so this is all coming from the machine itself, and I can, play each part on the device. I can make each part and put it all together and make a song. I like Grooveboxes. Before I even got into hardware, I was very attracted to the idea of a single machine that I could compose music on, and so that obviously drew me towards Grooveboxes. And I find the MC-808, if I were to say, call it as a thing, I would give this a 8 or 9. Of course, it looks a bit old now. It is dated. It's from 2007, and it even looks older than that with the 80s metallic and the red LED numbers and stuff like that. It definitely looks dated, but it's got its own charm in that sense. The reason I rate it so highly as a thing is because it's very easy to use. The user interface, you press record and play, and it counts you in with the metronome, and then you just start playing things into it, and then you go on to the next part. It's very easy to use, and it's very enjoyable to use to make sounds, or not to make sounds, but to make different tracks and different beats and stuff like that. It's quite nice to use. Although because it's dated, some of the features of it, there's a sample designer and stuff like that you can use in software on the computer, but it's so dated that it doesn't even run on Windows 10. So there are drawbacks to it. It as an instrument, I would give it a 9 because I'm rating it as a Groovebox and not as a synthesizer. And as a Groovebox, it's a wonderful thing. You can make some really complex and different music. You don't have to be stuck to the 2007 music style that this thing was made in. You can make totally weird music or totally pop music or whatever you want. So yeah, as an instrument or as a Groovebox, I'd give it a 9. As a thing, I'd give it an 8. And that's the MC-808. Let's move along to the failed experiment I had in modular here, the Make Noise O-Coast. This thing I bought because I didn't know if I wanted to get into modular. Actually, I went into the store and I wanted to spend a few $1,000s on modular, and I ended up walking out with this because I was so overwhelmed by modular. And I'm glad that I didn't end up getting a big modular system or starter system, because honestly, in my opinion, modular is not for me. It's even upside down. Modular is not for me. If I had to rate this thing as a thing, just the Make Noise O-Coast as a thing, I'd give it a 9. I think it's really well made and very well laid out. The only reason I don't give it a 10 is because for somebody who's new to modular, all their different names for things are a little bit rise, fall. They're a bit too, proprietary, instead of having whatever. I can't even think of the word. Instead of having more formal terms for things, they've chosen their own names for things, which can be a little bit throw you off a little bit. I don't know. It's not too bad. It's not totally out there. But yeah, 9 as a thing because it definitely look at it. It's a chunk of music right here, and it looks like the kind of thing that would be fun to just play with and make sounds with, and it is. And as an instrument, because I'm limited by my lack of enjoyment in modular, I would give this thing an 8 or a 9. The sounds that I can make are quite basic, and I'm not going to plug it in and show you because it's too much work for something I don't really want to do. But the sounds and stuff are really basic. Of course, you can do lots of drones and things like that, and you can set up boom, 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 boom. You can set up different things to not just be a single melodic tone or whatever. But personally, it's just not for me. 8 as an instrument, 9 as a thing. I'm not going to talk about this guy because I'm going to be giving it away in a giveaway, which you can find the link for up here in the video. So if you comment on the video up here, you can possibly win this thing. Yeah, okay. Moving along. This here, the Polybrute, the Arturia Polybrute, is the latest synthesizer I bought. And this, as a thing, I give it a 10. As a thing, it just says, play with me. Like, look at it, just you just want to touch it and play with it and turn all the knobs on it and mess around with everything. It's a 10 as a thing, easily a 10 as a thing. Everything is well laid out. All the knobs are, it's like almost entirely knob per function on here. There's very little, very little menu diving in here. Mod matrix is nicely laid out and helped me understand how to use a mod matrix. Effects section, like on the very right of the system, and then your sequencer and stuff like that. This as a thing is a 10. It's wonderful. The color combination, the like build quality, the solidity of it, it's a definite 10. As an instrument, I'd also give this thing a 10. It's 6 analog voice synthesis or synthesizer. I'm like forgetting how to speak words. It's got 2 completely different filters which you can run separately or both together. It's just such a wonderfully made synthesizer, and it's so well thought out that it makes it very easy to use, but it also has so much depth in the ability to make different sounds with it, and it can make such a wide arrangement of sounds, and I'm completely blown away by this synthesizer. I give it a 10 and a 10. It is a perfect synthesizer. The only problem with this thing, I would say, is the price. It is kind of pricey. But I mean, you're getting a lot for the price, so it's kind of understandable why it's so expensive, but it's definitely not like, it shouldn't be somebody's first synthesizer if they're trying to save money and stuff like that. Definitely not your choice. But yeah, 10 and a 10. Let me go over to the MPCLive and we're going to try some sounds on it. All right, let's give this a try. Just a string sound. If I play the sequencer, I mean, that's just one patch out of so many. There's just so much that I can do. Let me just try the patch here. Maybe not my favorite patch, but it at least demonstrates the kind of versatility that you can get out of this synthesizer. You can create some completely different sounds from each other. So as an instrument, as a thing, the Polybrute definitely scores a 10 and a 10. What a wonderful synthesizer. All right, moving along here to the Voyager XL. This was my first analog synthesizer. It was also the most expensive one I bought, and at the time I was just kind of like, I was blown away by analog synthesis. It's fair to say that my first actual analog synthesizer was the Korg Minilog, but I don't really count it because it was kind of like a quick step until this one here. I'm thankful that the Minilog introduced me to analog synthesis, but I mean, this was my first real step into analog synthesis. As a thing, hard to say. Like, I just want to say 10 because it's beautiful in an old kind of style way. I like the fact that this panel can be raised up and dropped down. If I'll just do that right now, let's see. Maybe it's not safe to do that. But it can be raised up and dropped down to be flat like the Polybrute over there, or up like this. Very classic Moog styling. It's got wonderful like wood construction throughout and then metal construction up here. It's got almost knob per function on here. There's very little else that you can do. It's quite simple as a synthesizer too. The mod matrix is basically just a patch bay, which intimidated me for quite a while. But as a thing, I would say this is a 10. You know, it's quite a nice machine, and it's got nice touches, like the aftertouch when you push it down. It's got an extra layer for the aftertouch, like little touches like that. It's really nice. I would say it's a 10 as a thing. As an instrument, that's a hard one to say. I think I would, with my limited understanding, give this a 9, perhaps, as an instrument. It can make some really nice sounds, but with a lack of effects, like built-in effects. I mean, people can argue that's not what the synthesizer is about, but I will say with a lack of built-in effects, it can sound quite dry. I said that in my Zoya review, that this thing can sound quite dry. So having an effects pedal or some kind of effects processor with this device is highly recommended. But yeah, as an instrument, I would give it a 9. I mean, it can make some 10-level sounds, but it is quite simple too. It's not gonna blow your mind with its versatility. It's limited by it being like very strictly and very dryly an analog synthesizer, a mono synthesizer, one key at a time analog synthesizer, and it doesn't really do anything like crazy in any one direction. It's just a really solid analog synthesizer, in my opinion. Again, this is from my limited understanding. So I'm going to play a couple sounds on it and see what you think of the sound. Let me pause this. All right, let's try this out. Pretty cool. Of course, you can't play notes together. You can't play chords because it's a mono synthesizer. Let's try another patch. Drum patch. Pretty cool. It's like growling and voices. So it is quite versatile as an instrument. Obviously, it's quite versatile as an instrument. But 9 as an instrument, 10 as a thing, and let's move along. Here we have the Jupiter 80, which was a disappointing synthesizer for anybody who was expecting Roland to remake the Jupiter 8 in present day or modern times. But it, as a thing, I mean, I really wanted one of these things, and I like the build quality of it, and I think that I wanted this in a time before I really got into like using knobs and knob per function, so it was quite attractive to me then, but as my tastes have progressed, I think that I don't like this layout as much as I used to think I would, buttons and stuff like that. People tell me it's a stage performer. I can see that. It's more of like a stage piano and less of a like synthesizer or synthesis synthesizer. It does have synthesis engines built into it, and you can tweak them and modify them all you want, but it is cumbersome using this little touch screen, and it's not like an iPad touch screen. It's the old kind where you have to press it in, like use a stylus would be even better. So that is not an attractive feature on a synthesizer that you want to mesh with. It's nice. It's got like so many keys. They're nice and heavy. And as a thing, like the shape of it, the colors of it, the design of it, I would give it an 8. The only reason I wouldn't give it a higher is, as I said, using the touchscreen is annoying. and not having more knobs to control on here. I mean, my tastes have changed, right? I'm not so much into buttons anymore, so having almost no knobs on here, it's kind of a turn off. So 8 as a thing. As an instrument, I would give this maybe a 7, maybe an 8, but probably a 7, which is still a good rating. It can make some wonderful sounds, and it has a lot of built-in sounds. Like if I go to single right here and I go to edit on the natural piano, whoops, let me just go back there. On the natural piano here and go into here, I have such a huge selection of different pianos and stuff. Unfortunately, there's another synthesizer playing along with everything, and I'm not sure why. Why is it doing that? Anyway, like I said, this is kind of annoying to use. It's got so many different pianos and things and synthesizers and string instruments. It's got so many instruments built into it. So it's very versatile, and it can make some cinematic sounds and do some crazy things. But it as an instrument, I would call it a 7 just because the user interface is such a pain in the ass to use. It is not as fun to use as I would hope from synthesizers. It's not the direction I want to go in synthesis. I want to go more to making my own sounds, and this thing is a total pain in the butt to make your own sounds on. It's great if you just want to use the built-in sounds, and there are so many of them, and they're so well done. The sampling that they did of all of the different instruments that they have in here is wonderful, and it's wonderful in that sense, but it's not so good for my purposes. So yeah, a 7 for an instrument. Moving along, here we are at the OP1. Here is a device that I wanted for a long time. When I say a long time, I wanted it for a month and got it. I lusted after it. I loved the design of it, the compactness of it, and I really liked buttons at that time and wasn't so much into knobs yet. So everything made sense to me. I watched videos about using it as a Groovebox. So again, we're rating this thing as a Groovebox. And I mean, it just spoke to me. I really wanted one, and I finally got one, and I loved it, and I still love it. I don't use it as much anymore, but I still love it. I think it's a great machine. As a thing, I would rate this thing a 10 because of the, again, just the chunk of matter that it is. It's such a wonderful little thing. And as a Groovebox instrument, I would rate this thing 9. 8 or 9. And the reason I say that is because although it is quite versatile and it can do a lot of stuff, if I go into the different synth engines, it's got lots of different synth engines in it. But my only problem with it is the synth engines are quite limited. And I kind of wish for more. They kind of sound toy piano-ish. It's hard to get the synth engines in here to sound more like more than video game music or toy music, toy piano sounds. The synth engines, I feel like they could really do with an update. It'd be nice if considering that Teenage Engineering upped the price of this thing, it would be nice if they also introduce some new synth engines. And I'm imagining it's a memory limitation that they can't put more in, but maybe the option to flash it with different synth engines overriding the current ones or something. I don't know. I just feel like the built-in synth engines on here kind of suck. I mean, they don't suck, but I just used them up. On the other hand, you've got this red jack right here that you can plug in any TRS, that's stereo input, and record into the tracks on here. And that means that you're not limited to the synth, the synth engines in here for sound. You can record, for example, any of these synthesizers into your tracks on here and start recording it into there, and you can overdub onto each track, so you can record this and record that, and you can build on this thing. As a Groovebox, this is a 10. I said that as an instrument, it's a 9. As a Groovebox, it's a 10. Let's just split the difference and call it a 9. Because of the versatility of being able to introduce sounds into it, of being able to record stuff, having a built-in microphone, having the ability to record off the radio, which this thing can grab radio signals and you can sample off of the radio. Like, this thing is a fantastic Groovebox. It's just such a crazy little thing. And as a thing, it's a 10. So yeah, that's the OP1. Let's move over to this guy right here. This is the Korg EMX1. It is another Groovebox, and again, I lusted after this thing because of the layout, or because like the layout, combination of the layout, the design, the coloring of it, the like metallic blue, the tubes on top, which are pretty much useless. Everything spoke to me. I really wanted one of these things. It looks like the kind of device that says play with me. And as a thing, I would give this thing a 10. I mean, it's really well made, it's stylistic, and it looks fun to use, and it is fun to use, and as a thing, it's a great little machine. As an instrument or Groovebox, I would give this thing I would give it an 8 or a 9, and the only reason I would say that is because, for example, compared to the MC-808, which has like channel 10 to channel 16 are drum parts, and each one is a drum pack. So like if I select this one right here, each one here is a different drum sample for that drum pack. Each one here is a different drum sample for that drum pack, and so on and so forth. Whereas the EMX1, which came out at the same time as it, each one of these is a single drum sound. So you choose a drum pack or create a drum pack that is this many parts right here, and you can use that in your song. And then here you've got 5 parts for synthesis, so 5 different synthesizer sounds. And the machine generates all of them itself, so that's kind of cool. It's a little bit more like hands-on with that. And you can put it all together. And make some really awesome music with it. But again, in comparison to the MC-808, it is quite limited because you've got the 5 parts for harmonics, or for, not harmonics, for melodic parts, and then you've got these for singular drum parts, like each one is a singular drum sound. As opposed to here, where each one of these, up to 9, is a synthesizer part. And you can have 9 parts of synthesis and another 7 parts of drum parts. So it's kind of limited in comparison to that. As an instrument or drum, like a Groovebox, I would give this a 9 because you can be very creative with it. It's not quite a 10, but a 9 because you can be very creative with it. And even with these just like limited 5 parts of melodic parts and like singular drum samples, you can still be very creative with this and make some extremely different kinds of music on here. You're not limited to making music that was part of the times. If I can remember how to change, let's try this one. Oh, let's see here. Just had to remember how to unmute stuff. So you can actually make some really cool stuff with this. 9 as an instrument or Groovebox, and 10 as a thing. Yeah, that's my rating for this guy. Moving along, we've got the Empress Effects Zoya right here. I just got this one right here. It is, I mean, it would be way short selling it to just call it an effects pedal. It's so much more than that. It is a synthesizer, an effects pedal. It is so many things. You can check out the review for it right up. Get in focus. Right up here. Check out the review for it. I'll put the sticker there. But it is so much more than just an effects pedal. It is so many things, and all in such a small package. I'm just going to give you an example of the synthesizer built into here. Yeah, there's the effects of a synthesizer that's built into here, and this synthesizer was made by the guy that made the process or the preset, but it's not locked in there. I could overwrite this with my own synthesizer that does its own things and is set to its own notes. So this, as a thing, what a cool thing it is. Like, just look at it. It again just says play with me. I would score this a 9 or a 10. The only reason I would score it a little bit lower is because it could be intimidating to somebody who just wants to buy a pedal. I mean, if they didn't know what they were going for, it would be like, that is a pedal? Like, what is it? With all the buttons on here, it could be a little intimidating. Personally, I would rate it a 10. But I like thinking about what other people might think. I'd give it a 9 in overall appeal. It's well made. It's got nice coloring and a nice light up buttons and a little LED screen to tell you what's going on. It's all solidly built. It is a nice thing. It's a totally nice thing. As a like an effects pedal, I would score it probably, like, in usefulness, I would score it a 10. But of course, it does take time to like make patches and things like that. But it's I would say it's a 10 out of 10. It's a very nice effects pedal. Let's move on to, well, I guess I'll quickly say a word about the Eventide. I'm not going to plug it in. This is the Eventide H9 Max. As a thing, I think it's quite boring. I would call it like 7, maybe. It's quite boring looking, and the like screen when it lights up, it's just like red LED things, kind of like these ones right here. It's not like an OLED screen. It's more like this. And it's kind of a boring design. They were like playing it safe. It's just a pedal. It doesn't try to be more than that. And it's not bad. For usefulness, I mean, it's got some great built-in presets. If you just wanted to buy a single effects pedal with lots of stuff built into it, like lots of effects and stuff like that built into it, then you wouldn't go wrong with this. I think that it gets a bit more complicated when you introduce like the iPad or like the iOS program for it and start doing your like programming your own presets and stuff like that. I think it becomes a little more complicated, but as an effects pedal, I mean, heck, yeah, it does what it does. 9 out of 10. So 7 out of 10 because it's a little bit boring looking, but 9 out of 10 for its usefulness as a pedal, as an effects pedal. All right, last but not least, the center of my studio is my MPCLive. So I'm gonna go right off, go right ahead and say, as an instrument, or Groovebox in this case, because it's a Groovebox for me, I give it a 10 out of 10. There are so many things about this that are just useful, like the 2 MIDI inputs and 2 MIDI outputs is great for controlling lots of gear. You see my gear goes this way and that way, and I don't have to buy a MIDI splitter in order to get it to do that. I also don't have to worry about lag from going to too many things on one side, all because they put 2 and 2 in here. Most of the other, like for example the Machine X doesn't have those like dual MIDI ins and MIDI outs, so that was a nice feature for somebody who likes gear. It's got lots of I/O back here. It's got a wonderful touch screen that is very accurate. It's got frequent and constant firmware updates that add new features to it. Ever since it came out in like 2017, when it came out in 2017, I was kind of like, it's not bad. And then after all the updates, I was like, wow, this thing is crazy. And I use this to control all of my gear, and I think it's an absolutely fantastic device. As a thing, I'm also going to go ahead and give it a 10. Because as like a Groovebox thing for like making music and controlling it, I think it's very appealing looking. Might be a tiny bit boring looking because it's just black, but you know, the color light up pads, the beautiful touch screen, the knobs on the side, the buttons down here, the layout is very attractive, and it, in my opinion, it does say play with me. It's also nicely packed together. I mean, it has a battery and stuff. I think it's a wonderful device, and I think it's a wonderful thing. So that's my thoughts on the MPCLive as a thing. Now I could show you a few things about it. Right now it's controlling MIDI, so I can control all my gear. I can also go to programs and select from a plethora of different, for example, drums. Now that I've done that, oops. Now that I've done that, go back to main, program, drum pack. Here it is all. I can't really figure it out right now, but you can just choose from a bunch of different drum packs. You can choose from a bunch of different sounds. You can record your own machines into it. There's just so much you can do with this. So it as a thing is a 10, and it as a Groovebox or like instrument is a 10 for me. And that pretty much wraps it up. Let me turn the camera around and finish off this video. Alright, that's it for my video of hardware as an instrument and hardware as a thing. I hope you guys enjoyed watching it, and if you have any ideas for things that you'd like to see, or for example like a deep dive into any of the machines that you've seen today, then let me know in the comments down below and I'd be happy to oblige. Thank you guys for watching. I will see you guys in the next video. Don't forget that I have a competition going on, or not a competition, a contest going on right now on one of my videos. I already linked it before about giving away a pocket operator, and it's just basically chosen by somebody in the comments, chosen randomly. So that's going on right now until March 15th, which is 4 days away by my clock in China. 4 more days for you to get in on that. So again, thank you guys for watching. See you guys in the next one. This is Kitty Kiss out.